I'd like to introduce Eric Corey-Fried. Eric, are you there?
I'm here. Hey,
there
everybody.
He is.
Hey, Nick.
All right, good. Eric, good to see you again.
You too, man. Haven't seen you in a while. Thanks for dressing up.
Likewise,
Yeah.
Eric. Welcome, Eric. Eric is SVP of Sustainability for CannonDesign. Specifically, he's in charge of the healthcare, education, and commercial teams that work towards better and higher performing buildings, amounting to more than 20 million square feet a year. Folks, if you do have questions, don't hesitate. Please type them right into the Q&A box, and in about 10 minutes or so, we'll get to those questions. First come, first serve. Without further ado, take it away, Eric.
Thanks. I'm gonna show slides just because I hate the thought of everybody looking at my face. So thanks, Nick, for that. Thank you, Peter, for including me on this. As you heard, I'm Director of Sustainability, CannonDesign. If you're not familiar, CannonDesign is a top 10 architecture firm. I think of the top 10 largest firms in the world, we're number 10. So we just squeaked in there. That's great. And if you want to email me or message me, you can do that there. And then also, if you want a copy of the slides I'm about to show you very quickly, you can text the word green to that number and you'll get an automated response. That's not my number, so don't send me pictures of your junk or anything like that. Just send the word green to that number and it'll work. Okay, so like many of you, I've had 2 years to think about life, right? We've been trapped indoors for 2 years and I've been thinking about it, and I hated it. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely, you know, I used to speak at 50 events a year, so I was on a plane every week and I loved it. And for the last 2 years, I've been trapped in my house. And I don't know about you, I wrote a book during the pandemic because I didn't know what else to do. This is my 12th book. I wrote it on the circular economy. And there are some amazing circular economy speakers, by the way, at this event that I was gushing over. So I was happy to see that. If you're not familiar with the circular economy, I think you will be, because it's really a way to rethink and redesign everything in the world. So isn't that what's really needed? If you think about the traditional linear way that we make things, it's very much a take, make, waste type of approach. It's really converting all the Earth's valuable resources into landfill in just the dumbest way possible. That's what we've been doing for 200 years. And the circular economy is advocating a different approach, really bending those linear arcs from take, make, and waste into harvest, make, and remake over and over and over again. And it's why companies like Adidas and IKEA and Intel and Amazon and Patagonia have all embraced the circular economy. We got to talk with all of them in writing the book, which was kind of amazing. But I'm here to talk to you about architecture, and that's what I do. I'm an architect, and we build a lot of buildings. And if you look at the history of architecture, it's really a history of technology, really, right? Think about the Great Pyramids. The Egyptians figured out how to stack these stones. We're still not entirely sure how they did it, but they had a technology to do this, and they created pyramids, which still stand 5,000 years later to this day. You think about how the ancient Greeks took their temples that were originally made out of wood, and when those wood temples burned, they recreated them in marble. And again, the height of technology at the time. And as the technology increased, so did the impressiveness of our buildings, right? These turned into Gothic arches, and then eventually structural flying buttresses, and then eventually crystal palaces that made way for skyscrapers. And that kind of led us to where we are today. The history of architecture is the history of technology, but along the way, as technology has risen, the architecture has not followed. And what you have is you have a lot of buildings that are bad. I don't know any other way to say it, but they're failures in terms of how they look at energy, how they look at health, how they use water, and certainly failures in terms of how they manage our resources, how much they cost. They're still relatively prohibitively expensive for most people in the world. And of course, their dire effect that they have on climate change. And so as you think about this idea, how can we get the architecture to suddenly rise up to the technology? At the same time this is going on, we have a world that's changing every single day. I think if anything, the last few years have shown us that climate change has really come for everybody. So as I see it, all of our clients are facing these dire threats, these dire drivers. They might not even know they are, but they are. And so, you know, my role is to really talk to them about these kind of drivers. You know, how is the insurance market changing, affecting you? How is the push for carbon regulation affecting you? How is stakeholder engagement and their demand for carbon transparency affecting you? All of our clients seem to have sustainability goals, and I imagine yours do as well. But very few of them know how they're going to get there. I was in a meeting with a, let's just say a very big client that you've heard of. And they had a very ambitious carbon goal to be carbon net positive by 2025, right? And I asked them, well, how are you going to get there? And they said, we don't, what do you mean? And how is this building going to get you there? They had no idea. It was like there were two unrelated things. I was in another meeting with another big name client, and they started telling me how they were going to cut their energy use by 80% by 2020. And it just sounded weird to me. And I said, at the time it was 2021. I said, it's 2021, right? But they had been saying this 2020 kind of energy reduction stat for 10 years. It just became like a talking point that they would just kind of blurt out. And 2020 came and went and they didn't even notice. And so they very quietly suddenly changed all their goals to 2030. So what we're seeing is we're seeing a big embrace of sustainability, which is great, but no real way to get there. So what I want to talk to you about today is I want to talk to you about three things very, very quickly in about 10 minutes. I want to talk to you first about the urgency of this and how we as architects view it. Second, I want to talk about how to redefine cost and rethink it. And then third, I want to share with you an innovation approach that you can take with you. So I think you can use it. And like I said, I'm going to do it pretty quickly, but that's okay. You're fast studies. Okay, let's talk about the urgency, because this is rather urgent. I remember I was in high school. This is June '88. And Jim Hansen, chief climatologist at NASA, was presenting to Congress. And in it, he said, and you can see it on the front page there, a sharp cut in burning of fossil fuels is urged to battle the shift in climate. Jim Hansen then went on to say that if we don't do something within 30 years, we're going to see massive changes worldwide that's really going to affect us and affect our ability to house, clothe, and feed everybody in the planet. And almost 33 years to the day, this was the cover of the New York Times. Basically, everything that Mr. Hansen had said had come true. Climate change comes for the wealthy nations. That comes for all of us. A month after this headline, the IPCC released its sixth and final assessment report, what's been called a code red for humanity, an alarm bell, if you were, that we are basically desperately need to do something and should have done it 30 years ago. And now we're seeing that we already have enough greenhouse gases in the atmosphere to push us past our 1.5 degree target. So this is bad news. And the trouble is that I work in buildings. I work in the built environment, and all of our buildings seem to be built based around a set of assumptions that are no longer true. And in fact, I would argue some of those assumptions maybe never were true. We're designing buildings like it's still 1920. And that's not the case. And at the same time, all of this is going on, we're building a heck of a lot of stuff. The world's building stock is going to double in area by 2060. To give you a sense of scale, that's building an area the equivalent of New York City every 5 weeks, and then doing that every 5 weeks for the next 40 years. That's how much building is going on worldwide. So it's just kind of unprecedented is the only word I really have for it. At the same time, China is consuming everything on the planet. They used more cement in 2 years than the United States did in all of the 20th century. So again, unprecedented. They're building 50 bridges a year. They're building one large dam a day and have been every single day since 1949. Just massive amounts of building going on there. And they need to, of course, but if they do it the traditional way, they're going to completely blow their carbon budget. And at the same time, we're consuming like crazy. There are 4 new dollar stores that opened up today in the United States. In fact, 4 new dollar stores open up every single day here in the United States because we love our cheap crap, I guess, right? There are more dollar stores than there are McDonald's, Walmart, and CVS combined. It's just a lot of stuff. And most of that will end up in the landfill, which is why in 2020, we passed a rather grim milestone, which is for the first time in human history, all of the man-made stuff now outweighs all of the living biomass on Earth. In other words, those old rollerblades that are sitting in your closet, that now weighs more than all life on Earth, basically. That's never happened. It also explains why one of the richest guys on Earth is the guy that sells us all this crap, right? That kind of tracks. So here's where I think we are. I think we're just like la-di-da, we're just kind of on the swing and completely unaware of the danger lurking over our shoulder. We've known about this for a long time. Every president since John F. Kennedy has been briefed on the threat of climate change. Let that sink in. For most of us, every single president in your lifetime has been briefed that there is this existential threat called climate change and we need to do something about it. And pretty much every single president has done bugger all about it, really, if you think about it. Biden has made it one of his 4 pillars, which is amazing. In fact, there's been more activity in the last year than there was certainly in the 18 years that preceded it. But here's where we find ourselves today. We find ourselves at this crossroad, and the decisions we make in the next 18 months are going to determine the rest of our century. So do you want to have a rough 18 months or a rough decade, or do you want to have a really bad century? That's the kind of Sophie's choice in front of us, I guess. You probably all read that book by Jim Collins, Good to Great. If not, you should. It's a great book. And in the back of the book, Jim goes through this exercise that he does with CEOs. And he asks CEOs, what are the 5 most brutal facts facing you today? And then he talks about how he does the exercise. But I love this exercise. So I thought, what are the 5 most brutal facts facing the construction industry today? And the first one is that climate change is going to change everything. Eventually, there will be some semblance of a price on carbon. And we're seeing it at the local level in New York, in Boston, and certainly in California. But once you drive a price on carbon, the big carbon emitting buildings are going to they're going to have to change. Number 2 is that liability is going to make whole regions uninsurable. And when I say regions, I mean whole industries and whole geographic regions like the Southeast, both uninhabitable and uninsurable. And we're already seeing that from the insurance companies. Number 3, most brutal fact, is that we still don't have a viable low carbon alternative to concrete. There are some great speakers on this panel that I'm, again, gushing over and obsessed with, and I can't wait to hear what they have to say, that are exploring how to do this. But for the most part, we still use a lot of traditional concrete, and we need a greener low carbon alternative. Number 4 most brutal fact is that the sheer demand for materials is going to require that we start growing building materials, engineered living materials, bio-based, synthetically modified, DNA manipulated, whatever it takes. We need to start growing materials. And there are some amazing companies that are starting to do that. And finally, the 5th most brutal fact facing us is that we need to embrace technology. And we need to embrace it in a way that we in the construction industry have never really done in the modern era. And we need to bring our buildings into the 21st century in order to speed and scale construction and then lower cost. I really see us as needing to do 6 things very quickly. We need to make it as efficient as possible. We need to get everything down to 0 right away. We need to use every tool in our toolbox. Oop, I jumped ahead. And we need to do it now, right? We can't wait. And we also have to use nature as a technology in a way that we never have before. The truth is the construction industry is not equipped for this. We're not really using any sort of data or insight yet the way other industries are. We're not really seeing the productivity gains in construction that other industries have over the last 100 years. We still don't have really a lot of automation or prefabrication. My firm, CannonDesign, we own a prefabrication company, to give you a sense of it, of how important we see this. But really, it's just a small fraction of what we generally build. Here's where we need to get to. We need to get to 0, and we need to do it by 2050. And we need to make 80% of those cuts really by 2030. And 2030, I looked it up. It's not 10 years away. It's like 8 years away. In fact, it's less than 8 years away. It's about 92 months away. So we need to make a lot of action in the next 92 months. So there is no time. We have 0 years. All of our clients have 2040 plans and 2050 plans. And I've told them that if you have a 2050 plan, that is a today plan. So pull it off the shelf, dust it off, put it in action, because in order to get where we need to get, you need to be doing it today. And most of them are not. They're hoping to kick the can down the road. The other thing that I struggle with is that anytime that we demolish a building, anytime we build a dumb glass box, or anytime that we're not targeting net 0, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody, but anytime we do these things, isn't that a form of climate denial? Isn't that really denying the reality that's facing us? And I struggle with this every day and push our clients every day because of this, which leads us to number 2. We need to rethink cost. I was working on a cancer center for a client, great client, and we're working on a cancer center. And I said, hey, I've got a crazy idea. What if we don't put cancer-causing chemicals in the cancer center? Wouldn't that be smart? And everybody's like, yeah, let's not put cancer-causing chemicals in the cancer center. What a great idea. What a visionary. And just as we were all kind of like really excited about that idea, the client said, well, I have to ask, what's it going to cost to not put cancer-causing chemicals in the cancer center? And I said, well, in the long run, it'll be free because of all the savings you'll get in health and everything else. But upfront, it'll be a delta of, I don't know, $16,000. And just as my words were still in the air, $16,000 were still kind of floating in the air, the client then turned to the engineer and said, oh, that reminds me, where are we with the $26 million parking garage we're building next door? So $16,000 gets scrutinized to death, and I need to like demonstrate a life cycle cost analysis for it. But subsidizing everybody's parking habit for 26 million, goes unquestioned. And this is the problem. I'm starting to suspect it's not about the money, because we certainly subsidize a lot of bad behavior. GM somehow managed to talk the American government into paying for all of its infrastructure, right? We spend 177 billion a year maintaining our freeways so people can drive. All told, about 2.6 trillion spent since the 1955 Highway Act. Goes unquestioned, never gets scrutinized. But if I want to do a better building that doesn't have cancer in it, suddenly I'm the weirdo? Like, that's just strange to me. There are so many things that we don't think about, right? The coffee and donuts in the office, nobody asks for the ROI on that. The Christmas decorations, nobody wants to see the payback on that. We do it because we enjoy it. We see the benefit of it. And that means that we've been selling sustainability wrong. We need to find a better way to do that. So it's not about the money. And this chasing of money and efficiency, I think it's become a bit of a trap. In reality, a green building is a better building. So let's not sell you on sustainability. Let's sell you on the benefits and outcomes that sustainability provides. That's what's needed, right? And a green building provides a lot of benefits. So this is what we do with our clients. We're designing a school. What if we could boost test scores? Does that have value to you? If we're designing a hospital, what if we could boost patient recovery outcomes? Does that have value to you? If we're designing an office, we can boost collaboration and team performance. Does that have value to you? So in other words, if you do it right, sustainability doesn't cost you money, it makes you money. And then we get out of that kind of apples to apples comparison, or that oranges to oranges comparison, because it's not a fair comparison. There are orange slices, and then there are, orange slices, and they're not the same. And so to compare a green building to a regular building is not the same. If we do our job correctly, we could save potentially $10 trillion by the end of the century and save ourselves in the process. So to me, this is a no-brainer. Plus, buildings are terrible. Have you been in think about the typical healthcare environment, right? Long waits, low comfort, high stress environment. It's awful. You can smell the stress in a bad hospital. Think about the typical school environment, right? Uninspiring spaces, bad lighting, bad waste everywhere. Think about the typical office environment that you haven't been in for 2 years. Bad air, bad light, and bad collaboration. What if we start to design to these outcomes instead? And if we start to change what we measure, our KPIs, our metrics of success, we could potentially change the world. But I was thinking that our KPIs are kind of all wrong. Think about, how do we measure success in a building? We measure cost per square foot, maybe revenue per square foot, maybe payback. But how should we measure success in a building? Shouldn't we measure patient recovery times, or stress reduction, or employee retention? Those things also have value. In fact, they're probably the most valuable part of the building. If we design for that, doesn't that become the most important thing? And then how could we measure success in a building? Couldn't we also measure how much energy we produce, how much carbon we sequester, or how many species we provide habitat for? That also has a value. So if we change what we measure, we can change the world. So we don't sell our clients on sustainability. We sell them on the outcomes and benefits that sustainability brings. But most architects and engineers get very bogged down in all of these technical terms. These are our standard metrics that we use, right? EUI, PEUI, embodied carbon, particulate matter. And I noticed that we only tend to measure the negative things, by the way. So we don't measure oxygen levels. We measure how much stuff is choking out the oxygen. And these are fine, and we're very good and comfortable with these. But our clients don't care about these metrics. What our clients care about is different, right? They care about money, CapEx, OpEx, ROI, ROR, IRR, right? All these weird initials that we as architects and designers don't really speak. So it showed me that we're really focused on the wrong metrics, the wrong KPIs. And what we needed was like a missing link, like this thing that would connect the client's concerns and KPIs with ours. As Simon Sinek says, start with why. Well, let's start with the why. So let's map out a series of outcomes that clients and architects can all agree on. Things that have value, that have benefit, and are important. And if we do that right, that'll also save us money. Okay, before I run out of time, let me say that in the time that I've been talking, another 1.5 million tons of CO2 has been released. So clearly we have our work cut out for us. I'm hoping this has opened your eyes to this possibility of designing to outcome. And if you do this, wouldn't that be the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? Okay, if you want to contact me here, and I think I've got a minute or two for questions. Thank you.
Eric, you're a pro. That was fantastic. I for one would definitely love to have a copy of that.
Oh, sure.
And I suspect others may too. Eric's contact information was there a second ago, but I believe it's available elsewhere as well. Regrettably, I do have to cut it.
One more thing, Nick, we're going to put
yeah.
his, Eric, we're going to post it to the website. So don't worry about getting disseminated. Just send it to me. Thank you.
Yeah, but compliments to you, Eric. That was one of the better I've seen in a long time. I mean, that very much in the spirit of Al Gore's original from ages ago, but with a whole lot of additional, you know.
But a lot shorter. Al Gore's like, as you know, he's like 6'4", and I'm not that tall.
Well, that was terrific. Much appreciated. Thank you very much.